Hi there. If you saw my video last week, I talked about probate sales, and I promised you that this week I would talk about trust sales. So just to be really crystal clear, in case you missed that video, you don't have to go back and watch it unless you're dealing with a probate, and then I really recommend it because there's a lot of steps with a probate. But in a nutshell, when a person who owns real property, that means a house, land, mobile home even, when a person who owns real property passes away and they're deceased, what happens to their real property is determined by the documentation or the lack thereof that they left behind. If a person has the forethought, which I'm a big fan of, for your children, for your heirs, it's very, very helpful before you pass away if you do a trust. There are great trust attorneys. Sometimes it can cost about $2,000, but it's one of those things that it's really worth saving the money to do, because let me tell you, when you hear these three reasons, you're going to see why and you're going to understand. Anyway, when someone passes away and they have not left a trust, the property that they own goes into what's called probate. The court is the boss. The court, California court, that's very congested, gets to decide what's going to happen with the property and gets to oversee the entire process of you getting it sold. I'm assuming that I'm talking to someone who is the heir or the family member that's left behind that gets to make all these decisions. So one of the things the court will make you do is to hire a probate attorney. That's reason number one, that you hopefully have a trust. When you have a probate attorney, they will charge you anywhere depending on the size of the asset, because probate attorneys will charge a percentage of the sales price. So if you have like a $700,000 property, then that real estate attorney, that probate attorney, is going to make a lot of money. So I don't want to put a figure out there, and I'm not an attorney, but I want to say I've worked with plenty of them. So the average cost is about $10,000 to $25,000. That's the average that I feel comfortable giving you because it can be higher, it can be lower. But let's just use that as a range, 10 to 25,000. That's a big range, and that's a lot of money. But because the person who's now deceased did not have a trust and it has to go in probate, that's what it's going to cost. So number one reason you want to trust is you're going to save your heirs a lot of money. Number two is because when you have a trust, the person who you leave as the trustee, otherwise known as the executor, that person gets to make all the decisions. So they do not have to wait for court approval for every single step of the way like you do with probate. So it immediately cuts down the time of say, a traditional listing where I can list it tomorrow, we can be in escrow by the end of the week, and we can close in 30 days, right? Or even sooner. That's with a traditional sale. Well, guess what? That also can apply with a trust sale. Probate, not so much. Probate, each step of the way, the courts have to be involved, the attorney has to file this and then file that. It's a long, drawn-out process. So that's number two. We're talking so far time and money. And then the third one is because when you are the trustee or the executor, say you have siblings, say that there's other people that the deceased left behind and they want them taken care of too. When you are the executor, you just get to carry out those wishes. You get to decide what the property is going to sell for, what it's going to list at. You don't have to go through, like with the probate, you have to show comps, comparable marketing analysis to make sure you're getting the right price and all of that. You don't have anyone babysitting you. The courts, a probate attorney, you're the trustee, the person who decided to go ahead and get a trust, which is a really good thing to do. They made you the executor, you the trustee. They're going to trust, pun intended, that you are going to be fair with whatever siblings you have or with whatever heirs exist. With a probate, you can get into a bunch of family feuds. Say there's 3 or 4 brothers and sisters, and they just all want to argue on, no, this, I get this, you get that. That's little things, because, let's face it, when we lose a loved one, emotions run rampant. And what could just be like a coffee table that's not a big deal suddenly becomes a huge deal, and people want to take each other to court. So a probate introduces all sorts of opportunities for family feuds. for people contesting the whole situation. We don't want that. It's hard enough that you had to bury a loved one. We don't need all the extra grief, right? So those are the three reasons. You're going to save lots of time when you have a trust, or your heir is. You're going to save them lots of money that would otherwise be left to your loved ones. And really, why should you work your whole life long, save money, make investments to give $10,000 to $25,000 to a probate attorney when you could have spent $15,000 to $2,000 and had a trust so that everything that you desire to happen to your assets gets carried out by your executor? So, of course, you want to choose an executor who's very trustworthy, again, pun intended, but you want to make sure it's someone who's going to follow through with your will, because with a trust, there's nobody that's peeking over saying, did you make sure to give that vase to your cousin Phil? Nobody's going to be like nitpicking you like that. With a probate, they will. But there's no one that certain things go to. It all gets sold, liquidated, and then divided the way that the court sees fit. And it's usually in order of heir, right? So it's very unsettling to have a loved ones, whether it's your parents or your siblings, but have someone pass away, which is hard enough. But then to have the court think that it gets to tell you what happens and when it happens and how it happens and if it happens. And you could have to wait for like up to 3 months before you can even list your property. I'm not kidding. So you definitely want to have a trust for those reasons. So if you're watching this, and I'm sorry if you lost someone you love, that's always my first thing, is my condolences. But secondly, if they got a trust, if they did a trust, then thank them. Really give them a big thanks, because that's going to save you so much time and so much money and so many headaches and so much documentation. It's going to be crazy. But if you happen to have a situation where they didn't leave a trust, they didn't have a will of any kind, then you're going to want to go back and you're going to watch that video that I did last week on probates, because it's going to apply to you and you're going to have to make sure that you know what's in store for you. Now, if you need help with either of these, or you just want to, even say you're a homeowner, you're nowhere near deceased, but you want to ask me any questions about the process. Now, again, I'm not an attorney, so I cannot give you legal advice. I am a longtime professor of real estate and real estate law, so I understand it, but I cannot give you legal advice. However, I absolutely can connect you to some very scrupulous, ethical, honest, affordable probate attorneys, as well as estate planning attorneys. So if any of that sounds interesting, or maybe you just want to sell your house in advance and enjoy the money and go on a big cruise, whatever it is, if you have any real estate needs in the Sacramento region, the greater Sacramento area, please connect with me. I am so happy to serve you, and I come with 30 years experience. You would never regret it, and I'm happy to help you. Have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for watching.